Hello, today you will hear a story with an interesting plot. You can live for a long time with the confidence that your life is flowing smoothly and calmly, and the only problem in your life is a slow iPhone. And indeed, a beautiful wife, 2 wonderful children, and only bright prospects for a happy old age ahead. But everything can change overnight. At once and you're on the sidelines of life, or suddenly you find yourself walking in a completely different direction, and you are surrounded by completely different people. I was born prematurely. My parents spent my entire childhood trying to protect me from the storms of life. I walked outside with the boys, always under the supervision of one of them or my grandmother. My coming home at odd hours was a tragedy of universal proportions. The boys in the yard are always good psychologists. They have a keen sense of human nature and react to it accordingly. Oh, they really felt my nature. I was bullied by everybody, even the girls. It got to the point where I was afraid to go out. Right outside the doorway, I was met by an aggressive crowd of peers and the educational work began. I would come home covered in bruises and bruises. My parents couldn't do anything about it. They tried to talk to the kids, but it only made it worse. You can't keep following a teenager around all the time, protecting him from adversity. It seemed that my hopeless childhood would never end, and my days would end under the skirting board. One day my mother's cousin Daima came to visit us. He was finishing military school and was about to leave for the army. He immediately sketched my situation. It was winter and hockey battles were going on in our yard. Clearly my place was outside the hockey box. Uncle Daima had been watching my suffering for some time, and one night he came into my room. Humans are predators. There is only one right among predators, the right of the strongest. You will be beaten all your life until you fight back. Until you shove your fear up your ass, nothing will change. A man is all about honor. You don't have it now, but there's a chance to get it back. Don't be afraid of pain, blood, and snot. But turn your will into a fist and fight back with dignity. They'll let you lose, but your honor will not suffer. Daima stroked my head, lit a cigarette, and left the room. 2 days later, I was accepted into the hockey team. But one of the boys got sick, and I was assigned to replace him. The game was in full swing when our 3-man offense rolled out to the goal. I gave an accurate pass to my teammate on the stick, but he missed. He couldn't put the game to bed in a tense situation. Of course, I was blamed for everything. They called me all kinds of names, and at the end, the unlucky player even punched me in the face. But all the accumulated rage at one point hit me in the head. Without thinking twice, I hit the offender in the face with my stick. The guy collapsed on the ice like a wreck. He had his hands over his face, but he was bleeding from the bridge of his nose. I grabbed the stick and looked around at the others. Everyone stood in silence, until one of the guys said, "It's your own fault, asshole." Or had nothing to do with it. In the evening, the mother of the victim came running to our house. My parents were shocked. Our son had hit a man. They should be thankful he didn't kill him. Uncle Dima grimly joked and laughed. But from that moment on, everything changed. No one called me names or harassed me anymore. I was accepted into the pack. Like everyone else in my childhood, I went to different sections. I learned a little music, played hockey. Uncle Dima was already in the army. During one of his visits, he took me to the martial arts section. They streaked. You were unlikely to become a great athlete, but you'll learn to protect yourself and your girlfriend, he said. That was the last time I ever saw him. 6 months later, he was killed in one of the hot spots. I first a replaceable loss. The classes in this section taught me self-control. I'm not talking about the skills I learned. As strange as it may seem, I was making progress. I was already competing in national competitions. But that was not my goal. I went to a technical university and 5 years later became a mechanical engineer. But I never went into production. I was attracted to the army service. Dima's stories did their job and changed my life. In my 3rd year at Uni, I met Natasha, an ordinary girl from an ordinary family. A natural blonde with brown eyes. She was friends with my classmate by then and was going to marry him. There was not a spark between us, but lightning. She broke off the engagement with her boyfriend, despite the entreaties of her family and friends. 6 months later, we were married. A year later, twins were born, a boy and a girl, Dima and Michelle. I adapted quickly in the army. I went to a lot of hot spots. I even went to Africa. I was sent as an instructor to an African country. My job was to train their soldiers in artillery. I was an instructor in a mortar battery. That's how I served for 6 months. One day on my way back from training, I broke the main rule not to drink water from local springs. But it was hot and I couldn't help myself. As a result, I got hepatitis and was sent back to the home country for treatment. I was hospitalized for about a month. Hepatitis is a serious condition. My liver was the first thing that got hurt. When I was discharged from the hospital, the doctor said I was lucky, that there could be problems in the future. He didn't specify what kind. A year later, I was seriously wounded, and further service was out of the question. Retired from the reserve with the rank of captain and started adapting to civilian life. I must say that my wife was always there for me, except for when she went to Africa, of course. She never left me for a single day or went away like some wives do to take a break from their husbands. I always knew there was a loving woman waiting for me at home, ready to watch my back. But when I was a civilian, I looked around for a while and then opened a shop for repairing musical instruments and toys. It might seem odd, but don't underestimate it. I had a waiting list. There are always many music lovers who want to fix their favorite instrument. The new ones cost a lot of money, and repairs are affordable. After 2 years, the shop turned into a company, and in addition to repairs, we began making exclusive guitars and luxury toys. Natasha worked as a doctor at the Regional Diagnostic Center and also earned a lot of money. We had a large apartment in the city center, inherited from my grandfather, and a spacious country house which we built ourselves. The children went to school and everything was fine. I must say that Natasha was one of those rare types of women who don't age. Chicks, on the contrary, they become even more beautiful by adulthood. Not a single wrinkle on her face, cheek curly hair, beautiful breasts, and an attractive figure. And finally, legs from the ears. And all this is my wife. I, on the other hand, began to have a little problem. My body started to gain weight, a consequence of hepatitis. Gradually, my figure got heavier, and I lost the abs on my belly. That would have been all right, but I noticed that my wife became self-conscious about me. No, the love was still there, but we were less in public together. We really loved each other and were always together, both at work and on vacation. Recently, there was a trend for corporate parties. But lately, my wife used to go to these events, sometimes with me, sometimes alone. I had no reason to forbid her to have fun. But at some point, I began to notice strange looks from her colleagues. I didn't pay much attention to this, but still, subconsciously, I became tense. Something was going on behind my back, but what? I could not yet understand. Gregory, a well-known businessman in our city, had been coming to my wife's office for some time. In our time, he held a firm position in the construction business. And then he got sick. Natasha was a cardiologist and successfully conducted a course of treatment. But the businessman was passionate about his health and daily sought to get to her appointments, swissed with bunches of flowers. One day I decided to meet Natasha after work. As I was kissing my wife, out of the corner of my eye I noticed a businessman with flowers, but he turned around in time and walked past us, pretending to be going to someone in the center. Doubtless Siri a presence. It did not escape my notice that Natasha blushed thickly and averted her eyes. You know how blondes blush? Retaliation. One night at dinner, Natasha turned to me. Yura, Gregory, you know him, is throwing a party. He wants to invite you and me. As if incidentally, she said, pouring me a coffee. What does that have to do with us? I snorted and looked at my wife. I knew about her so far platonic relations with Gregory. I was even going to interfere at some point in their tender friendship, but for the time being I decided to observe what would happen. I trusted my wife, especially the businessman is not the only man around Natasha. Not to be jealous of everyone walking around in their pants around her. And he wants to thank me for the successful treatment. Lots of famous people will be there. Live music. We're invited. The party is Friday this week. By the way, Natasha, I wanted to talk to you about Gregory. It seems to me that he's trying to glue you together. It reminds me of Hunton. Hitchens, even from the outside you can see he wants to get hold of you. Doesn't it seem like he's playing around? I put on the table a cup with half-finished coffee. You're out. I have nothing with him. Yes, he gives me some attention, but no more than that. Well, maybe. You do realize that if something else happens, it would be a disaster for us. Yura, don't be silly. I just want to go to the party. And I want you to be there too. I'm not going to flirt with anyone. Natasha blushed. And somehow, I think that Grigory will pursue you in every way. Can you imagine how things will turn out if he does? I watched Natasha's reaction carefully. After all, we are adults. We won't be there alone, and there will be security. I can take care of myself. Don't be offended. My wife ran her fingers caressingly over my cheek. In the end, I agreed. Natasha talked me into it after all. But I didn't decide to go because I listened to my wife. I wanted to settle the matter with Natasha and the businessman once and for all. The party was scheduled to start at 7 o'clock in the evening. Natasha was putting on her makeup in front of the mirror. She looked like a model on the runway. Her dark red, almost burgundy dress looked stunning, to say the least. It unobtrusively emphasized my wife's almost perfect figure, perfectly letting me see the bulges and curves in all the right places. I do not know why it upset me. Some bad feeling did not leave me all these days. I dressed simply. The black loose pants, a white shirt, and a velour jacket. I thought for a long time about what to wear on my feet and settled on black leather shoes with pointed toes. Maybe not too fashionable, but functional. Natasha hugged me and kissed me on the lips. Do you think I look good? I answered glumly, you look amazing. You know it yourself. I only wondered one thing, for whom are you so dressed up? Look for you, my love, only for you. Listen, let's not go. But to hell with this party, we'll have a great time at home. Don't. I was grasping at straws to postpone the inevitable disaster. Honey, we had a deal. Natasha pouted. You look great too, by the way. I looked at my wife and took her in my arms. She took my hands from her shoulders and reproachfully looked at me. Yura, you'll wrinkle the dress. I realized that in her mind, she had long been at the party. For a moment, I thought I was saying goodbye to my wife. I took her by the arm and walked her to the door. Natasha was walking down to the car when, without changing my body position, I flicked the light switch with my left foot right above my head. But the emotions vanished into thin air in an instant. I was ready. We arrived almost on time. Versus the gate was open, and we drove freely to the parking lot in front of the house. Luckily, the valet ran up to us, but I didn't trust him with my car. Then he just showed me the empty spaces. I didn't hesitate and took the last one, to be able to freely leave the garage if necessary. I did everything on automatic. My subconscious mind and my still not quite lost army skills worked for me. I gave the valet money and asked him not to force my car, leaving a free pass. Natasha looked at my maneuvers with surprise and concern. What's all this for? It's like you're getting ready for something bad. Relax, my love, everything will be fine. But I didn't care what she said. I just shrugged it off. It's just a little precaution. We'll see how things work out, I answered vaguely. The most important thing is that this party is not the end of our marriage. That's the end of our marriage. The wife suddenly turned pale. It seemed to me that she knows something, something ready for something, but what? Damn. It's getting bad before it starts. But maybe all is not lost yet. We walked to the front door and up the marble steps. Just before the door, Natasha turned to me. Yura, let's have fun today. Neither you nor I want any trouble. Let's relax and enjoy nice company and good music. The door swung open and the young man asked for our last names. I said our names. He looked at the guest list for a while and then uttered, Natalia Vickers and a companion. He looked at me and I saw a sneer in his eyes. 2 people, come on in, gentlemen, have a nice evening. I looked at my wife in surprise. Vicks with a companion. Vicks like a free supplement? Cold rage stirred in my stomach. Natasha looked at me strangely and squeezed my palm reassuringly. And as we passed, I saw, out of the corner of my eye, a contemptuous smirk on the lips of the guard. At the entrance to the hall, we were met by Mr. Grigjev himself. Beside him stood a young woman in a very short lettuce dress. Her short cropped black hair beautifully framed her swarthy face. She smelled of expensive perfume. The owner kissed my wife's hand. You are a miracle worker. I just have no words. Then the businessman turned to me. You're Yuri. I've heard a lot about you. Nice to meet you. Picture for you. He smiled at Natasha. I'm just Boris. He held out his hand for me to shake. I took it. He started to squeeze it. I responded in kind, looking into his eyes. I could see that he was already in pain, and he was trying his best not to show it. Okay, that was enough for the first time. I unclenched my palm. There was a long pause. Then just Boris smiled and said, Come on in, friends. Make yourselves at home. In our other guests. He did not introduce his companion to us. But dear listeners, your support is very important to us. If you like our story, please like, comment, and subscribe. It's very motivating for us. We need your feedback to improve our content.